Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, I want to remind you that on September 7th, Finding Hope will present Run for Hope, formerly known as our sobriety sprint. This event will have both in-person and virtual options. This is a family-friendly event to honor those we have lost and to spread hope in our community. You can learn more, register, sponsor, or honor your loved one at runforhoperace.com. But today I'm so excited. I'm sitting down with Christian Carey, and I met her just like a month ago or so. You came to one of my Finding Hope meetings with your dad and kind of shared your journey as a daughter growing up with a father in addiction. Mm-hmm. And so before we jump into that, share a little bit about yourself with our listeners.
Okay. Hi, I'm Christian Carey. I am 21 years old from Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I love to travel and I love to read. And that's pretty interesting. That's all about my hobbies.
Where do you like to travel? Where's the best place you've been?
Probably Alaska. My family lives up there. So we go there about every other year. And it's always something new. Like you can never get bored there. There's always something to do. And then Alaska, and then probably I went to England for soccer. That was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
That one was fun.
So you've been all over, it sounds like, traveling. So do you have any big travel plans for the summer?
I'm going to California next month to go visit my friends that I met when I was traveling. So that's all. Yeah, that's about all. I just got back from Colorado, though, with my dad. I get it from my dad. He likes to travel.
He does.
Yeah,
he's always posting and gone.
I know.
Yeah, so good.
I'll call him, and he'll be like, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just hiking the Grand Canyon. I was like, oh, just hiking.
Okay. Well, good. Well, so let's jump in. Your dad, Titus, is on our staff as well. And so I got to know him, and he does an incredible job for our ministry. But, I met him in recovery while he was in recovery. So tell us, though, a little bit about growing up with him. Did you know he was an addict growing up? Just take us back as far back as you want to take us.
So I mostly remember it when the addiction started, when my parents got divorced. So I was about 8 years old. And then after my parents split up and we they had a joint custody thing is when I really started noticing my dad with an addiction. It was like, he would definitely try to hide it, but I wasn't, I could obviously see things that were going on, just hiding alcohol in different places or going in the fridge and it'd be hidden and stuff like that. And then a lot when I was growing up, he was very absent. He was talking to a wall basically. Imagine I'm talking to you, but you're just not saying anything back. That was kind of the vibe that was going on. But other than that, that's...
So kind of what your first memory maybe of is your parents divorcing when you were young, 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And then you would go between the houses. And when you were with your dad, it felt like you're talking to a wall.
Yeah.
And you saw alcohol hid, but obviously back then you also didn't know what alcoholism or addiction or anything of that is. But when did you realize, or did you as a young child realize this is a problem, or, why is my mom acting one way when I'm at her house but then my dad doesn't act that same way?
I definitely realized when I was really young, which is something I've talked about too. And when I go and speak and stuff, I always feel like I had to grow up at a really young age because I was constantly calling and checking my dad to see if
So when you were at your mom's house, you would call and check in on your dad?
Yeah, I would call him, not exaggerating, if he wouldn't answer 30 times a day just to make sure that basically to check if he's alive. And I was about 9 at the time. So it was kind of a lot of pressure, for a little kid just to be calling and checking all the time to see if he's all right. I do remember my mom would definitely be more hesitant when I would go over to his house and stuff like that. But she obviously couldn't stop it because they had joint custody and the court and everything like that. But they would get into arguments about if I was staying over one place too long, things like that.
So with your mom being hesitant, what did that do to you? Did that put some red flags? And how did that make you feel going to your dad's?
I was honestly anxious all the time at my dad's. It was no different at my mom's. It was just constantly focused on my dad. Whenever I was at my mom's or when I'm at my dad's, I would kind of shut myself out from him, but also be very aware of what's going on. Like when he was asleep, I would go and like literally put my finger under his nose just to make sure that he's alive, things like that. Yeah.
And at a young age.
Yeah.
Wow. And so it did sound like you had to grow up,
Yeah.
you know, or, you know, you started to grow up in that sense. So when this was going on, did you tell friends or your teachers or any of that? Or were you doing this like just internalizing it all by yourself?
Internalizing everything. The thing with me is that I knew who he was when he was sober, and that's how I wanted everybody else to perceive him as, and I never want anybody to think less of him, because like you see the person he is now, which is what the person I knew I would know him as sometimes when he was when I was a kid, but no teachers knew. I was definitely struggling internally because I would not sleep at night, and so at every time when I was at my dad's, I'd be late for school because I would wake up. Yeah, I would wake up late, and I would go to class and I just fall asleep. And I know like my teachers would talk to my mom, and not really my dad, but would talk to my mom about things because she worked there at the school. So,
so how did that impact, you know, your friendships and all of that as well?
It was hard because the friends that I was really close to, I would sometimes mention it, but like nonchalantly, just like make sure that it's not a big deal. And it was kind of hard to navigate that as a kid. Like, what can you say to make your friends not worry about you, but also know that you want help and you're struggling, but I didn't want to ask for help. So the only person I really talked to about it was my mom.
So you're putting up a mask.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Putting up that mask, pretending everything's okay because you knew who your dad was without addiction. And we've talked about that on this podcast. Like they're one person when in their disease and another person when they're not. And so you wanted people to know your dad as who he is, like who God created him to be, and without the disease. So, but you put up a mask in front of your friends and all of that. Did that affect or impact your schoolwork? I know you said you would get to school late sometimes, be tired. So how did that impact, you know, schooling and stuff?
Other than like when I would come home, like homework wise, I would need help with stuff, and I couldn't ask him because he was drunk on the couch or asleep or something like that. So when I was at my dad's, I was feel like kind of like I was raising myself basically. Like I would cook for myself and I would do things by myself, and he would take me to school or my friend's house if I was a weekend or something like that. But the school wise, it was hard because I was always wanting to be like the perfectionist and be basically good at everything. And when I was like struggling with stuff like that, that really took a toll on me too.
Yeah. So were you involved in anything in school, like extracurricular activities and any of that?
Yeah. At elementary school, I had something that really like shaped who I was I played soccer growing up. And that was something that me and my dad really connected on because that's something he wouldn't miss for me. It was something like I could count on him for being there. And if he wasn't there, it'd be like, you know, like a shot to the heart. Like this is something that me and him have together and something that we bonded on. Same as like football, like OU football or something like that. That's something that like a good memory I have as him as a kid.
Yeah. So that was your guys' thing, is your soccer games, and he would be there and be there. Would he ever show up drunk or anything that you can remember?
So like the one time when I knew like things were getting bad was when I was 17, and it was like right before COVID hit, and like everyone knew like this was like our last game like for the year. And so
were you a senior or junior?
I was junior.
Okay.
So we were all talking and stuff like that, and then I was like right before the game, and like I called and like he wasn't answering and he didn't show up, and I called him and then he finally answered, and he was like, I could tell in his voice he was like slurring and everything like that, and I just like that actually set me like over the edge. That was like the first time I ever remember talking to anybody about my dad's addiction, because I was like crying under the bleachers, and then my friend came up and checked up on me, and she asked what was wrong, and she was the first person that I distinctly remember telling like what was actually going on in my life.
So that's 9 years. If you were since 8 years old to 17, if I did my math correctly, I think I did, 9 years that you had been holding it all in, masking it before you told anyone, even your best friend. How did that feel when you finally were able to open up and share it with somebody?
I definitely was nervous. It's like a nerve-wracking thing because I've always like put my dad on this pedestal and wanted to make sure everyone else saw him that way. So, but when I finally did tell him, I just remember it felt like kind of like a chain broke, like something in me switched, and that's really where it started. Like, hey, like this could like help other people, or like this could I need help, like this is helping me. So that's really what switched. And when I go back and think of like times when I go talk to people, that's a time that's been like really like monumental to me, when I told someone for the first time.
That's good. So it sounds like you realized by finally verbalizing it,
Yeah.
that good could come from this,
Mm-hmm.
that it felt good to share. Because I think so many times, a lot of our listeners, like they haven't told even if it's a parent or not a parent, a child, they haven't told anyone. And it's so like we can internalize and do all these things. But once we can finally, which I say, rip the Band-Aid off maybe and share, I say, well, you're not going to go to the mountaintop and share it, but like with discernment, and there is something freeing about that. And so once you shared, what did that journey look like after that?
So when I shared, that was the day, like my dad left for rehab about a week after that. And then
he never showed up at that game?
No, he didn't show up. I eventually, like, he didn't show up. That was like a really couple hard months, because he left for rehab in March, and then he got out, relapsed. And so then he went back to rehab in May, like on my birthday. And that was really hard, because I was wanting to see him, and he didn't want to see me because he was embarrassed. And I remember getting a text from him who was like, never ever take pills, or never ever do this, never ever follow what I did. And I was like, I don't ever plan on it. But after that is when he technically got sober in June. And ever since like then, my story and like his story, we had a really deep conversation, and we got everything out that really needed to be said. And since then we had like very, we go and speak and stuff like that. And I really feel like it started from when I first said something, because that was like really freeing, and being able just to cry to somebody and talk to somebody about it.
Yeah. And so when your dad said he was going to rehab, what feelings did you have through that?
I was mad.
I was mad
because which is funny to say.
No, it's not.
I was
it's a good,
yeah.
Others probably can relate. So
I was really mad, because I was honestly thinking more selfishly about me. I was like, he's missing my birthday, and or when he first went at the soccer, he was like, he missed my game for this. Like, he's ignoring me. Like, why is he ignoring me? And then eventually, like when he got done with it, I was like, the second time, I was like, wow, this is like the best decision that he ever made. And then I was like, why did I get mad about that? But then you can't help your feelings then, because I was holding stuff in for so long. Like, it felt like being let down again, really. But then I didn't really know what rehab was. Like, I was just like, well,
you're young.
Yeah.
Who knows at 17?
Yeah. The second time, I feel like I was more mad, because he was telling me he's going again, and I didn't know he relapsed. And so that's when I was like, whatever, like I was really frustrated.
Yeah. So he went to rehab, relapse, went again, and he's been sober since, correct? Okay. And you said that you guys go out and talk and share your stories together. Like, that's how I met you at Finding Hope. You guys came and shared. So what has your healing, when I say your healing journey, what have you done to work on this healing?
The first time I spoke was honestly the most healing for me that I've experienced. Is like, I can't even explain like how I felt inside. Like, I cried a lot, but I just felt really good about it too. It was when he was in the sober living. He was in part of HIA, and I was writing a essay for school, and I just lost my uncle to addiction. So it was like everything was hitting really close to home, and I wanted to like raise more awareness about it. And so
you've had a lot. Let's back up. That's a lot. So
sorry, I just trumped
No, you're good. So you were writing a letter for school. Is that what you said?
An
Essay.
Yeah.
At school. So were you a senior?
I'm a senior. Yeah.
Okay. At this time, you're a senior. Dad's been sober a year-ish?
Yeah.
6 months?
About 6 months. Yeah.
Okay. But you said that you lost your uncle.
Yeah.
To addiction as well.
All this was happening in 2020. Like, my dad.
That's a lot. And were you close with your uncle? Okay.
Very close.
And so I'm going to back. We'll get to this essay. Sorry. No, you're good. So losing your uncle to addiction, how did that make you feel? Or what, did it pull up any old feelings? Like, tell us about that.
So I lost my uncle in November 2020. My dad got sober in June 2020.
Okay.
So it was just a couple months after I got sober. It was my senior year. I was like, like riding this high horse, like everything's working out really, really well right now. My dad's getting sober, all this. And then I had no clue that my uncle had an addiction whatsoever. So this is my uncle on my mom's side. And so I had no clue even addiction was on that side of our family. And so I was laying in, I remember what I was watching, what I was doing. I was laying in bed. My stepdad comes up to my room and he like knocks on the door. He's like, Tyler passed away. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like it was like immediate denial. Like, no, he didn't. Like, what happened? I go downstairs to my mom just screaming, crying. Like, that's something you just never forget. And then I also remember my brother giving me a hug, which is like not what we do. Like we're still with each other. We don't like give each other hugs, that type of situation. So it was definitely like really, really hard. My mom was very absent for that part of my life. Not blaming her at all. Like she was there for what she could be, and I respect her totally for that.
Was this her brother?
Yeah, it's her brother. Okay. So I remember just like everything just came back. Like I felt like a kid again. Really, all these memories I had just came resurfacing, and I was like, how did something like this happen again? Like, why did I not know anything about this? I really felt really hurt that I was kept in the dark. And that's something me and my mom talked about, was like, I was upset that she didn't tell me that he was in addiction, but I understand her point of view of her trying to like protect me because she already knew what I went through. And so when I found out he passed away, it was really hard, really hard. That's all I really can say.
And so thank you for sharing that. And thank you. So sorry that you went through all of that. So your uncle passed away, your dad's in recovery, and you have to write an essay. What's the topic of this? Like, what was like the assignment your teacher said?
It was like for my senior year, like, and it was like an informative essay. Okay. You could really just pick your own topic, and this is something you want to raise awareness about, was technically the prompt, and so that's like what I wanted to talk about, and that's just how that started. And I go to this Claremore home, and the men's home, it was Tulsa first, because my dad moved homes. Okay. He was in Tulsa home. So it was a Tulsa home for men, and I go in there, and I go in there to technically to ask them questions. Like, I'm like,
oh, to write this essay.
Yeah. Okay. So you needed like an outside source. So I'm like, hey, I know an outside source.
Yeah, a house full of recovering addicts.
Perfect. So I go there, and they're like, I have this list of questions I ask, and then after that, I'm like, sat there and I'm like, well, this already feels really healing to me to get their perspective on things. So then I asked them, I was like, well, do y'all have any questions for me? And that's what like really started. And it was just like 2 hours of like these men like talking to me, and like we're all crying together. It's like a funny feeling, like we're all crying in like a room of grown men. I'm like, this is what needs to happen. Like people need to show their emotions like this. And this is what I feel like really like God was there in that room for sure. Definitely felt it.
Yeah, so that was the first start. And so you wrote the essay. What happened? Did you get a good grade?
Oh, I got a great grade.
Great. Yeah. I'm glad. And so you have continued to share. Did you go talk to the Claremore home too, or other homes?
I have talked to mostly Finding Hope meetings, and then I went to a recovery meeting not too long ago, and at Church on the Move. Okay. In Broken Arrow. We plan on talking in more homes. That's what I like want to do, like go to women's homes. I really want to do that. I haven't got to do that yet, but I can't think of any other homes, but mostly Finding Hope meetings.
Okay, sharing it, and as you share it, you feel like it's healing and taking it off.
Definitely. Like people come up to me afterwards and like thank me, and like I just want to thank them back, because like this is helping me more than you guys realize. Yeah. Let's talk about it, because I never got to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, you're 21. You grew up at age 8. I hope you're finding time to still be a kid. 21's young, believe me. So
I think that's why I like traveling so much, honestly, is because like I get to technically like I'll still be a kid, but like mostly go to concerts with my friends and things like that, and just spend time with them.
Good. So what would you tell if there's a young adult like yourself that maybe their parents going through this, and maybe they've kept it all in like you did? What piece of advice, or how about encouragement, would you tell somebody if they're sitting across from you right now?
I would definitely tell them, like, just don't keep it in. Like, it's okay to talk about it, and there needs to be a stigma broken on it. There's a huge stigma around addiction, everyone thinking you can just stop. It's not like that, and it's a disease, and you need to be able to take care of yourself, because that's a problem I had, was I was taking care of other people more than I was taking care of yourself. So make sure you focus on yourself and your healing as well, but you can still love and care for this person too.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, if your dad was in the room right now, he's actually in his office a few doors down, but if he was here right now, what would you tell him?
I would tell him that I am super proud of him and the person he is now. And there's a story that I was thinking of on this way here. Was I remember, like, as a kid, I was always thinking about how I never ever wanted to be like him when I grew up. I wanted to be like the exact opposite of him, basically, and I wanted to be there for my kids and everything like that. And then one day in Tahlequah, I was getting gas, and this man came up to my dad, and he was like, "Can I have some money, please?" So blah 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 blah. And I was like, and my dad gave him like $50. I was like, "Dad, how do you know he's not scamming you?" And he's like, "Well, Christian, this is just what God told me to do, and this is what feels right, and I want to be able to help somebody out just like other people have helped me." And I remember driving home and like crying my eyes out, because that was the first time I was like, man, I really just want to be like my dad. And it's just like a complete like 180 from what I experienced growing up. And I just wanted to tell him that I'm so proud of him and the person he is and the people he's helped.
Oh, that's you. You got me tearing up over here. So yeah, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing. We hear from a lot of moms and dads, and so I think it's important that people realize, the whole family is impacted, and it started with you at a young age, and we think sometimes the kids don't see it. We try to protect them. Even my kids growing up, like, they were young when my husband started, and they were 3 and 6, but Adeline, my oldest, she's now 15, she can recall some stuff too. So we're very open, and, we talk a lot about stuff. Even our youngest that wasn't even around during his active addiction, we talk about things just so we're transparent. But I think it's so important to remember, no matter how old they are, they know. And so it might be even just sharing with them, like, hey, we're a safe place, and there are some resources, and I'll give our staff some resources, some books that we can include for young children or teens going through this with their parents. So we just want to make sure everyone has the resources. So thank you so much for being here. And I always like to leave my listeners with a challenge. And so after listening to you, I think one challenge, and you already said it at the end too, is share. Don't internalize it. Don't keep it. Don't be weighed down by it. Share it with them. Find that safe person. It might be a friend. It might be a teacher. It might be a youth minister. It might be, maybe it's, whoever it is. Reach out to me. Share it with me. Share, we're here for you. But share and start the journey of that healing process. And so that's my biggest challenge for everybody, is to not hold it in anymore, but to be vulnerable and brave, because that's a brave thing for you to do right before a soccer game too.
It's so worth it though. Like that, once you finally get over the stigma and over like family shame is definitely something, like, you don't want people to perceive your loved one as someone bad, but they're not bad. They have a disease.
Yeah, that's their addiction. They're still the other person over there.
So sharing is definitely what I would recommend too. That really helped me in my journey, and that is something I wish I would have done sooner. But
yeah, it's God's perfect timing. We have to trust that too. So thank you guys so much for joining me this week. And you can learn more about Finding Hope at FindingHope.Today. But before you go, I would love for you to give us a 5-star review, share this on social media, and subscribe to our next hope-filled episode. Thanks again for joining me, Amy LaRue, and special guest Christian Carey on this episode of Finding Hope. And remember, you are not alone. It's not your fault. There is hope.